Hi guys, Kim here, design team member with Swirlydoos Kit Club. What I've got for you today is how to use our April Technique kit. What we've got in the kit are the new molds from Prima along with the Prima paper clay. What I've gone ahead and done is pre-made some molds, and I'm going to show you how to use the molds. We've got Baroque number 3 mold, and we've got Baroque number 6 mold. And as you can see, I've got some molds that are already in here. These need to set for 24 hours, so I went on ahead and pre-made some molds, and I'm actually going to show you how to make some with some of the clay that I've got here. And all I've done is put it in my hand and rolled it into a ball. You kind of need to knead this clay a little bit to get it a little pliable and make sure everything rolls together. And in the kit we've also got some of the Art Alchemy acrylic paint in gold, so we're going to use some of that to decorate some of the molds as well. But these are the 5 that we're going to go ahead and decorate with some paint and some other mediums. So what I'm going to do first off is we're going to pop these molds out of here and we're going to set these aside. As you can see, they come out pretty detailed. They've got some nice grooves in them, some really nice detail in them. I've made several already and they've come out all detailed. They're really pretty easy to make and they're a lot of fun. And if you pull them out while they're semi-wet, they're still a little pliable. So what you want to do is get you a nice sized ball of clay, and we're going to make this little small one. And you want to roll that around in your hands and get that pretty pliable. And so just give it a good roll and a good squeeze there. And you're just going to use your fingers and you're going to press this into the mold. And I like to use my thumb. I get the best pressure, and you're just going to press this into the mold. What you want is the back to be flat, and then you're going to start to push it off with your fingers into the and you're going to push it off the edges. So you want all your clay to fit into the shape of the mold, and the excess you're just going to roll off to the side. And you're just going to smooth that out so the back of your mold is flat, so that it lays flat on your projects. And you're just going to keep smoothing this around and hold on to your excess, because I used a little bit too much here, so I'm going to be able to make another mold here. You'll get the feel of this as to how much you're going to need depending on the size of the mold that you're going to make, as to how much clay you're going to need. So starting off, you may use a little bit too much, so you'll just have some extra to make another mold. So that's all I'm doing here, is trying to keep the back flat and keep everything smooth. And you want to make sure you fill in all those little small edges too. So you just keep smoothing this out, and you want to try and keep it in one piece. You may notice that you may get some cracks in the back of your mold as it's drying. One of the ways to try to alleviate that is, first of all, if you can fill this all the way into the edges, because you're going to get some shrinkage in your clay as your mold starts to dry. So if you can push this all the way to the edges and fill it in really tight, that's going to be one of the ways to avoid some of the cracks. The other thing is, you'll see me once I'm done with this and I feel like I've got it filled in really well, I'm going to mist a little bit of water into my hand, and I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to rub some water onto the back of this just to make sure that I smooth everything out. Those are just my 2 little tips that have worked for me as far as not getting the cracks or not having my molds crack in half. I had that happen a couple of times when I first started out using this, and those are the things, like I said, that have helped me. So as you can see here, I've pretty much got all the excess off. Now once you take your mold out, if you find you've still got some little excess on the edge and you're kind of a perfectionist like I am, take a little nail file and run it around the edges, and you can file that off. So as you see, I'm doing a little water trick here, and it's just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot, just a little bit on the tip of your fingers, and just make sure you smooth the back of that out. Now I've got enough excess here that I'm going to put this all together again, and I'm going to knead that clay back together again and roll it into a ball. And I've got enough. I'm going to make another little clock here, And I'm going to speed through this because you've seen how I've done it. So we're just going to speed through this and we're going to make the clock here. So here we go. Just going to push that in and zoom right through it and get all the excess off of there. And make sure you get this clay off your fingers. It kind of sticks to your fingers. But here we go, keeping that back smooth and filling in all those little pieces and trying to get it as full and as tight as you possibly can, because remember, you're going to get some more shrinkage with that. So again, fill it in and get that water and smooth out the back of it. So there you have it. Those are the tips on making the molds. And now we're going to set those aside. And these are some molds that I pre-made. And we're going to pull out some mediums and we're going to start to decorate these molds. I'm going to use several different mediums. Like I said, in the kit, we got some of the Art Alchemy paint in that metallic gold rush. So that's the first thing we're going to do is, no, actually, I'm sorry. Before that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat these with some clear gesso. These will take paint and mediums and everything with no problem, but I want to give them a coat of clear gesso just to make sure that my mediums stick. And you could also use white gesso. These are already white, but if you want to make them a little whiter, you could use white gesso. I'm just going to throw on a light coat of some clear gesso on all my pieces, and then I'm going to hit them with the heat gun. Not too hot. I just want to make sure that that clear gesso dries. And again, I'm just doing this because I want to make sure that the different types of mediums that I use adhere to this. Plus, I'll be using a little bit of water with them, so I kind of want to coat them because I don't want that water to make this clay sticky. And then just a light heat gun just to seal that on. All right, so now that we've got the clear gesso going, I'm going to use the paint first on this little small piece here. That's kind of one of my favorite pieces. So we're going to go ahead and pull out some of the paint in that metallic gold rush. It is such a pretty color. And I'm just going to give this a coat of paint. And before I paint it, I'm going to give it a mist of water just to help the paint spread out and get down into some of those grooves, to get into some of the details of my mold. So all right, so now it's all painted and some of my details are standing out, and I kind of went over lightly some of the raised parts. I didn't go over it as heavy, but I kind of like the way this looks. It's kind of got a two-tone look to it because it's lighter in some parts and darker in the others, and so I'm happy with it. If you want yours an even color, then you can just go ahead and give it a second coat, but I'm happy with the way this looks. So we'll set that aside. Next up, we're going to go with some alcohol inks, I think. I'm going to pull out some alcohol inks, some colors that I think are probably going to go with the kit. I'm going to use like a pink, a purple, and a yellow color. I think these will go with the kit well, so I'm going to try and mix these. And remember, when you're mixing colors, you always want to start with your lightest color first. I'm going to mist it with some water. And then with alcohol inks, you just want to drop them on there. So I'm just going to randomly drop these colors on here. I think my purple's a little too dark for the kit, but we're just going to go ahead with this. And then I'm going to take a baby wipe and tap some colors off and mist with a little more water. So that's the outcome. It may be a little bit too dark for the kit, but I still like the colors on this, so I'll just use it on maybe an altered project or something. But if you want your colors to run a little bit more, then mist it with a little bit more water. Mine kind of didn't spread out the way that I wanted, but you know what? There are never any mistakes in scrapbooking. It's just opportunities. So I'm pretty sure I'll be able to use this on something, but this just gives you an idea of what it's going to look like using some alcohol inks or some way to use some alcohol inks. And I like that it does run down into the little crevices, so you get more color there. So that's nice, and we'll set that aside. Next up, we're going to work with some different color alcohol inks, and we're going to add some of the Prima color blooms to this, and we're going to use some art stones as well. So we're going to use a couple of different type of mediums. First, with the alcohol inks, I'm using caramel and latte on this. I kind of want to give it a little bit of an aged look, especially with that gold foil that we're going to be using as well. So we're going to drop that on there, and again, I misted this with water first, and I like the way that my colors are blending a little bit better. I used a little more water on it this time. So we dried that, and I love the aged look on the clock. I really like how this came out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some matte gel medium to adhere my art stones. So I'm just going to randomly put some matte gel on the clock. And then I'm going to grab my art stones, and I'm just going to randomly sprinkle those on. I'm just going to grab a couple of fingerfuls and sprinkle those on as well. And now once I've got those on, I'm going to mist it with my color bloom, and I'm going to take my baby wipe and take off some of the color. I'm going to dry that. And there you have it. Now the color bloom has given another aged layer to my clock, plus it has colored my art stones. I really like the way the clock came out. But that's another way to use a couple of different mediums to layer them. Next, we're going to try just some plain old chalk ink. I'm going to grab some of my Prima chalk inks. I've got a pastel pink here that I'm going to use, and you can apply it directly to the mold, or you can apply it to your glass mat. And when using these, a glass mat's probably the best thing to do. And I'm going to take my damp paintbrush and pick up the ink and apply it, and sometimes direct to it. Now this seems to be a little bit too light for me. I can see the color, but I know it's hard for you to see it, and I'm really not liking the way it's coming out. So let's try a darker color. Let me get a darker color, and we're going to try this. This color is a lot darker. That may work out a lot better. Excuse me. All right, I'm liking the way that that's coming out better. It stands out a whole lot more. This is a bigger piece, so you can do some direct to it. Because it's chalk ink, it won't dry right away. You can take your paintbrush and spread it. And then to lighten it up, go ahead and take that baby wipe and take off some of the ink if it gets a little bit too dark. And what's going to happen is you're going to have it lighter on your raised edges, and you're going to have that ink that's gotten down into the crevices. So I like that. Now our last piece, what we're going to do is just do some straight misting to it, just some straight color bloom to it. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a mist, and then I'm going to heat it with the heat gun, let it dry a little bit. Because what I want is it's going to sink into those crevices again, and that's where I want it to dry first, in the crevices. So I'm going to heat it with the heat gun a little bit. Sorry, my heat gun's off camera. The cord's not long enough for it to reach. All right, now that it's dry, or it's still a little bit damp, I love the way that that looks. I'm going to leave it light like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my baby wipe, and I may go over it just a little bit, just to take off a little bit of color on the top, so it kind of has a little bit of that aged two-tone look on it too. I'm not going to take off a whole lot.